Playing the wrong tune in the wrong key. Gig nightmares for you and me. Song changed keys and I wasn't ready. Gig nightmares for you and me. Another key change, oh God, oh no. Gig nightmares for you and me. All right, Gig Nightmares. Here we are today. Todd, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Max. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, doing great.
Good.
So for the people of the internet, can you just give a little bit of background about yourself? Tell the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been playing music for probably about close to 35 years now. Spent 7 of that doing it professionally, which involved a band of mine that had a few records out called Gray M. So I spent that time touring the country, and since then I've just kind of been doing the regional band thing. You know, I got a 9-to-5 job, and just kind of do it on the weekends and whenever else I have the chance. But it's not my main gig anymore, so I just kind of put it on the back burner a little bit. But I still love doing it. Like, I still play probably between 40 and 50 shows a year, even with working full time. So it keeps me busy, it keeps me moving, and I still love every second of it.
And I see you've been playing with a few different bands, right? Like I saw you were playing with a Fully Loaded, country rock sort of thing, playing with Kenny Jenkins.
Yeah, which is Kenny's kind of like an old school blues / R&B kind of thing. So think like Hendrix to the Temptations, somewhere in there. So yeah, I like to mix it up and do some studio work here and there, but that's not really relevant to this podcast. But it's still something fun to do. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that's my story in just a few sentences. So
very cool. So I understand you have a few stories from your touring days.
I do, and yeah, most of these stories are probably from when I was touring with Graham. We'll start out with something that's just like, this isn't a particularly long story, but it's just the absolute worst. Do I need to watch my language on this, or?
No, say whatever.
Okay, all right. So this is just like, what the fuck, So when we first started touring, we had like one record out. Nobody knew who we were. And so we were kind of like on our own to book our own tours and stuff like that. So, you just kind of networked with whoever you could, and you'd get a number here, and, you'd call that person, hey, I know you're in Texas, but we're from Pennsylvania. We're trying to play, and so you just kind of took what you could get,
Sure.
And so it was our first full U.S. tour. And one of the shows we had booked was in Sioux City, Iowa, and again, I'm showing my age a little bit, but no GPS at that point. So we had the Atlas, and we're following the maps to this address that we got. And we show up, and it's a house, so we're like, we've played some houses before, and sometimes it can be cool, so we'll give it a fair shot, So, go up, knock on the door, hey, we're Graham, like, we're supposed to play here tonight. Like, the door's answered by, this like 16, 17-year-old kid. And he's like, what? And we're like, yeah, like, we got your number. We called here. He's like, oh man. I was like, and immediately we're like, okay, what's going on here? He's like, dude, my dad's done this before. Like, he gets really drunk and he books bands and then forgets about it. so we're like, okay, is your dad here? Well, he'll be home from work in like a half an hour. We're like, are you serious? Like, so, we're in Iowa, we don't have anything to do. So we're like, okay, well, let's hang out for an hour. And maybe he just didn't tell his kid about it. We don't know what's going on here, So the dude gets home and he's like, oh, hey guys. Hey, like, yeah, I totally spaced on this. Like, you come in the basement here. So we come in the basement. There's just crap everywhere. He's like, if you want to make enough room to play, like, I can call some friends and they can come over. We're just like, I think we're good. I mean, it was just kind of one of those, like, first time on the road kind of things where, when you don't have a booking agent, you're not signed up with a bigger band for opening a slot. Like, you're just like, you don't know what you're walking into. And that was just absolutely like,
but to travel all the way out there for that?
Yeah, I mean that obviously wasn't our only stop on the tour. Like we were in Sioux Falls the night before, and we had a show the night after, so it wasn't totally catastrophic, but it was definitely like, at that stage of the game, a night off meant money wise you might be going into the red.
Yeah.
So, so fortunately we played in Sioux Falls the night before and met a phenomenal promoter named Jason who, booked like the small club shows, but was also booking like, at that point in time, like, 311 at the local fairgrounds and stuff. So he was kind of like the guy. So we called him back and he was like, dude, we can find you a place to stay if you just want to drive back to Sioux Falls. So that's what we ended up doing. Like, we're just like, get us the hell out of here with this kid and his dad. I felt bad for the kid. Like, what kind of life do you have? Like, so
it makes you wonder, like, how many other bands got screwed over with
right.
that?
Exactly. And there wasn't the internet as we know it today back then. So, you couldn't see like what working with this promoter was like. You just got his number from somebody who he did a show for, and you needed a date in Iowa, so you called, and had you known, you probably would have just skipped it. Like,
So did the guy sound like audibly drunk on the phone, or no?
He didn't sound drunk on the phone, but he definitely like came off like that was pretty much his MO. Like when we met him in person, we're like, if he would have been like hyped about it and, trying like, oh, let me see if I can get a bunch of people here, we probably would have done it. But, he was definitely like not really that interested in making an effort. So we're just like, let's just move on. Hopefully tomorrow night will be better. And, we made it through that tour without totally losing our ass. So, it worked out okay.
There you go.
So that's kind of a good starting point for some of the shit we've gone through. Like, anybody heading out for your first tour, good luck. I mean, it's interesting the idea of doing it now though, because like now you have so much more information than you did back then, so, if that happened now, it probably would have been like, yeah, this guy's a bum. Like he screwed us. Don't play for him, but
yeah,
but we did not have that luxury at that point in time. And we were just excited to be on the road, like first record, first tour, like, we took what we could get, and some of it was really pretty bad. Like, so that's probably, that's a good starting point for this conversation, I think.
All right. What else do you have?
Another one, and this was like really kind of more of an act of God than anything else. We played Starlight Lounge in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there was like a 3-foot blizzard. And again, we're in that mode where it's like, well, if we don't make any money, that's closer we get to being in the red. This was still really early on. So we showed up at the place, they booked us with like 2 local bands, which we thought, okay, well, this will help, but weather-wise, like 2 of their friends showed up and they insisted on playing first and then left. So we pretty much played for the staff. Like,
that's always fun.
And, they're like, hey, we'll take a collection for you if you want, but you're not getting any money from the door tonight. So I think we walked out there with like $20. We've had a couple of those actually. We had another one in East Lansing, Michigan, and this is a pretty good story. I can't remember the name of the club, but it was us. We were on tour with a band from Baltimore that was kind of on their first tour. They were called Third Harmonic Distortion. They were phenomenal. So we get there, and again, like our 2 bands and then 2 locals. Again, the locals insist on playing first, which is kind of like in that scene back at that point in time, that was kind of a dick move, Like if you were the local band and you were kind of the draw, you kind of offered the headline so the touring bands would have more of a crowd.
Yeah.
And so, we do rock, paper, scissors to see who has to close out the show, and we lost. So we close out the show. So we get done, and there's like 1 guy left in the crowd. Everybody else is gone, right? And everybody else was gone pretty much by the time Third Harmonic Distortion went on.
Do you remember what time that was around then?
What's that?
What time you guys were finishing around?
Probably, I would say, it was a bar show, so I'd say it was pushing midnight, 11:30, 12 o'clock, something like that. And so there's this 1 guy left, and our singer, God love him, goes, hey man, if there's anybody out there that could like, put us up for the night or point us to a place to stay, that'd be really cool. Cause we didn't have a couple hundred to throw down on a hotel. So this 1 guy in the crowd comes walking up, and he's like, oh, hey, you guys looking for a place to stay? And, we're immediately like, oh my God, is this actually going to work out? And we're like, yeah, dude, yeah, that'd be awesome. And his reply was, yeah, me too, I'm homeless. And we're just like, Okay, that didn't work the way we thought it was going to go. Like, so, that was that was another good, like, hey, it's our first tour out here, and yeah, that kind of shit happens, like. So,
But how old were you during this tour?
I'm gonna say, let's see, I would have been probably like mid-20s. Like, so this was probably like, yeah, I probably would have been like 25, 26, something like that. So not to give my age away, but much younger than I am now. So, so that was kind of like, we had a couple of those early on. I think those two were probably like the worst. We played a show in Bakersfield, California. And again, this was like, back then all the bookings done by phone. So, you don't have the resources. You can't like, oh, show me pictures of the venue or, whatever. And so we get to this place and it's actually a boxing gym in Bakersfield, California. Right. But we're like, okay, we're at this boxing gym, but like, where the hell do we set up? And they were like, oh, you set up in the ring. And we're like, what? You got to be kidding, right? And they were like, no, that's where all the bands set up that play here. We're like, okay, like let's see how this goes. So I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of playing in or being in a boxing ring, but it is not a very solid stage at all. Like, there's a lot of movement going on. And I will mention, because I don't think I have so far, I'm a drummer. So when your drum kit is bouncing all over the place, that's not great. So, but we play, there was like probably, not a lot of people there, but it wasn't like nobody, and got a lukewarm reception at best. And then the local band goes on after us, who sets up in the ring, but while they're playing does this whole pro wrestling thing, like where the singer's like literally jumping off the top rope and attacking other people. And we're just like, it was like we were just in La La Land. We're like, what just happened? Like, is this a real show? Like, are these people like totally screwing with us? And nope, like that was their show, and their fans were into it hardcore, man. Like, I mean, back in the day, I loved pro wrestling, but I've never put it together with music before.
No. Like just like the idea that other bands were playing here, this is a regular thing. Like, I mean, I've heard bands like playing like skate parks and stuff like that, but
right.
Like at least you have a concrete slab of a stage there. But literally in the ring?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And I think what threw it off was like, it wasn't like we were playing at a place called like Joe's Gym. Like, it had some nondescript name that would never lead you in a million years to believe that this is a boxing gym. Like, so, to the point we showed up, we're like, are we sure we're at the right place? Like, this looks like a gym. This doesn't look like a venue. And it turns out we were at the right place. So, yeah.
So that was first the, potential gig in the basement. Now the,
yeah. Oh,
wow.
yeah. Like I said, when you and I were talking way back when you were starting this thing, I was like, dude, I got stories. Like, I have all kinds of stories. Like, we played, like I did say, we played like a couple like house shows here and there because, we're kind of in the indie rock scene, and that wasn't uncommon then. Like, fun little trivia fact, we played this house show in Santa Barbara, California. This place they called it the Pickle Patch, which I years later came to find out, like, one of the people who lived there was Steve Aoki.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, so I played Steve Aoki's house like 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Damn.
So there were actually like, that was actually a really cool show, but again, the house show thing was kind of weird. But there was this place in Colorado Springs called the High Life House, presumably named because they drank a lot of that beer. And they had like a pretty sizable basement, and they did shows. And, so we at that point had kind of like networked enough that we had bands we could ask, like, hey, have you played it? Oh yeah, we played there. It's not going to be the biggest crowd you've ever played for, but they'll take really good care of you, and everyone will buy a shitload of merch, and, Like, so it's worth the stop. So we're like, okay, that's cool. So at that point in time, I should mention we were kind of like, we wanted a good stage show, but we didn't have a lot of resources to create that at that point in time. And so one of the things that we had started doing was there was this kind of like breakdown in our closing song where it was just guitar, you know, just kind of riding it out, and the guitar could ride it out for as long as it needed to until I came back in, and then kind of big finale and we finished. Right. So we decided, you know, somewhere along the line, oh, it'd be cool to involve like some fire, you know? So by that point in time, I would use Zippo fluid, and I would basically light all my cymbals on fire, which
that's pretty cool.
If you've never done that, like with like any Zippo equivalent fluid, when you first light them, they just kind of glow blue and they don't really like flame up until you actually hit them, you know? And then when you hit them, you get these like flame shots up into the air. So it was actually a really, really cool effect. And then we coupled that up with our guitar player who wasn't playing the lead in for that part, blowing Bacardi 151 over a torch, which created this giant fireball, you know? And
that's awesome.
So, yeah, it was really, really fun. I can send you some pictures after this. Like,
I need to see that.
But you know, we were always kind of looking like, okay, what's the next thing we can do, right? And so our guitar player, our like main guitar player, decided, dude, I have this great idea. We're gonna involve some fireworks. So we're like, okay, I don't know if I'd call that a great idea, but what the hell? Let's try it, you know? So, you know, we have the shows that they did at that house were in the basement. You know, it's decent size, but it's not huge. They got like a couple hundred people crammed in there, and it was like a really good crowd. And so he decides that what we need to do to take our show to the next level is we're going to tape a bottle rocket to each of the guitar heads and set that off when we blow the fire. Right? Well,
how are you doing that in the basement?
Well, that was what we didn't think through. Like, so out, you know, none of us had ever really lit a bottle rocket in a house before. So literally within 20 seconds of this happening, everybody leaves. Like, you know, we cleared out the place in less than a minute. And, you know, the big finale that we're playing, there was literally no one there for. Oh. And we were kind of like, hey, maybe we don't ever do that again, because that really seemed like a bad idea. Like, we never did do that again, thankfully. We did some homemade flame towers, but that's a whole different thing. And I wouldn't recommend that either. Like black powder and PVC, not a great combination.
Jeez, man.
Dude, we were young and we wanted to be rock and roll, you know, like, and we didn't have a lot of money, so, you know, we got all MacGyver on it, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. And
that's just crazy. I mean, like, I always loved hearing like just crazy stories like that. You know, whether it's guys like G.G. Allen and like all the horrible stuff he did with his audiences.
Oh God, yeah.
There's a bunch of like Japanese noise rock bands in like the 80s and 90s. I can't remember the name of one, but I know that there's like a newspaper article saying that they enter the stage with like a bulldozer literally knocking down the wall of the venue or something
really?
like that.
Oh my God, dude. Dude, if you can find out who that was, you need to let me know. Because
like that same band, I think it was them. Like they did that, and then there was another show where they're literally just throwing Molotov cocktails into the audience.
Oh my God. Dude,
I need to find the name of that.
Yeah, if you can find the name, send that my way, because I wanna at least like look into this band. Like, because yeah, they sound like a whole bunch of entertainment. Like, you know, G.G. Allen, I never wanted to see him live, but all the stories I'm totally, you know, I'm totally here for.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, oh man.
I mean, like, I love like the whole like Motley Crue sort of thing where like it's like, okay, we're gonna do the stadium show with all the pyrotechnics and like do it in a small club. But then like I like the extreme version of that also.
Right. Yeah. Like,
oh, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, there's that's the thing, is like we always wanted to be showmen, so you know, you wanted to, you know, you wanted to do that big rock and roll show on like a Dollar General budget. Like, so,
I mean, at the end of the day, it's also, you know, it's entertainment without crossing the line of like parody or just like being too over the top, I guess.
Right.
Like I had a band back in high school called No Rain Checks, which I can look back and say, it's kind of a stupid band name. But anyways, so we kept trying to think of, okay, how can we be interesting? How can we like make the show more interesting, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure why, but my bass player at the time, he started dressing up in a bacon costume. I don't really know why. He
like
just said
bacon,
one
like
day,
the food?
yeah, like a
Okay.
strip of bacon.
That's awesome.
We just started dressing up in a bacon costume. So we would be playing shows and like, I don't know if people really liked us or not, but like people would just love the bacon costume and whatever. So we're just thinking, okay, what are more things we can do?
Right.
So for some of our like original songs and whatever, the one I kind of wrote to have like a big sort of like get faster than explode sort of thing, like AC/DC TNT.
Okay, right.
So it does that, and it just keeps getting faster and faster. And most of the guitars I play are either like Jacksons or whatever with like pointy headstocks. So like with as the song is like exploding, I would just like run over and just like take my headstock and just keep stabbing him with it, and he would like fall over and play dead and whatever. That's pretty much like the most I ever did it in terms of like, you know.
I love that though, man. It's the performance aspect of it. You know,
Sure.
I mean, the
fun.
music's one thing, but you know, to go see a live band, you want a performance too.
Oh, exactly.
You know, and that was something that we always strive to do. And sometimes it was worked out well, and like I said, sometimes it actually didn't. Like, there's actually another show that we played. So you know, we've been doing the fire thing for like a couple tours now, and I remember there was this place in New Orleans. I think it was called Movie Pictures, if I remember correctly. And it was literally, it was one of the first it was the first theater we ever encountered, the first movie theater, like multiplex that served beer. And so we were like, oh, this is an amazing idea. Like, why don't more places do this? But so they had one theater that was kind of like, I don't know if like the equipment was busted or, you know, they just didn't use it anymore. It was clearly not used for movies that they would actually have bands at. You know, and they'd pulled all the seats out. So, you know, it was kind of a pretty cool, like, theater setting, kind of like, almost like kind of theater living arts in Philly, if you've ever been there. Like, you know, it's kind of like that slope down to the stage, you know. So we're like, oh, this is a cool venue. This is great. And, but the stage wasn't particularly high. It was like 1.5 to 2 feet, something like that. And so, you know, we get to the end of the show and we're doing our big climactic finale. And I hit the cymbals, our guitar player blows the huge fireball, and apparently there was a girl like right up on the stage that had used just an absolutely insane amount of hair product, whose hair just went up. And you know, we made sure she was okay afterwards, and that's the only way I'm like, okay, kind of laughing about this story. Because her friends immediately just started taking coats and whatever and just like pelting her on the head to try and put it out. And again, another like, we had a big finish idea and it just didn't quite work the way we expected it to. So, yeah.
Ambitious.
And that was something, and it was something that we, you know, that was something that we had done at that point, probably like, I don't know, 50 to 100 times, you know, and we'd never had anything like that because we never really thought about like, oh, we really need to pay attention to the direction we're blowing the fire because, you know, with using 151, as soon as it hits the ground, it goes out, you know, so we never had to worry about like catching the floor on fire or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, we did actually, our guitar player that was blowing the fire did have this bright idea in Texas one time, since they sell Everclear there, that we should try that. And thankfully I had the wherewithal to be like, dude, we are trying this in the parking lot before we ever do this inside anywhere. And so he blew one fireball, it landed on the ground and just burned for another minute. And we're like, oh yeah, we're not doing that. We need to go back to 151. Like,
wait, so like, did you not need to ever get like, I guess permits or permissions or anything for this?
We would usually kind of give them a heads up that it was happening. And that, you know, we do this every night, like it's totally under control. And it's funny you should mention that because there's only one place that ever said no. And it was, I remember very clearly because we ended up getting along with the owner really, really well, but he was just like, nope, you're not doing it. I'm sorry. It was a place called Ray's Downtown Blues Bar in West Palm Beach, Florida. And so we kind of said, hey, just to let you know, we involved some fire in our act. Here's what we're going to do. And he was like, nope, absolutely not. We're like, seriously, like we do this all the time. Like we guarantee, you know, nobody's going to get hurt or anything like that. And he points up to the ceiling of the club and goes, do you see those burn marks on the roof, on the ceiling? And I was like, we're like, oh yeah. He goes, Yeah, that's from Reverend Horton Heat like 3 nights ago. He's like, you are not doing anything with fire in my club. We're like, okay, that's fair, I guess. Like,
I didn't know they use pyro. I've seen them a few times. They don't do that anymore.
yeah, I mean, this would have been probably like 99, something like that. So it was a while ago. And it was kind of in their heyday.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when they were kind of big on college radio for a while and stuff. And, yeah, so they apparently were blowing fireballs the night before and caught the ceiling on fire. Or not the night, but sometime earlier that week. Like,
That's awesome.
but he, you know, like I said, we ended up getting along well with him. So after the show, the place closed down, and he's like giving us free shots, and we just ended up hanging out for like another 2 hours.
Nice.
Yeah, hanging with the guy. So, you know, it was all good in the end, but we were kind of like, oh, come on, man, we've done every show this tour. He's like, nope, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I appreciate you being honest about it. The second you do that, you're never playing here again. We're like, okay, fine. Like, you know, and he was such a nice guy about it. We couldn't say no.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, I plan to like interview a few people who like actually encountered it firsthand. But with my old band, Living the Dream, the singer for that band, Tim Eckert,
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
back of the 90s, he played in a band called Steel Rose, and he was telling me something that happened, I think, 1 or 2 times. They were playing out in Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. I think I don't remember the name of the club. But obviously, I wasn't there to see it.
Right.
But he was saying that with their lights and PA system, whatever with like the circuitry and whatever, it was just so powerful that the one club, it was either 1 or 2 clubs, I don't remember for sure, but it was so powerful that they would be playing the show, and then as they're packing up and they're leaving, just all the electrical stuff is fried and it ends up burning the club down.
Oh my God. That's fucking terrible. Like, I mean, you know, that probably speaks to some faulty electric. Like,
Yeah.
I would think. But a lot of the clubs back in the day didn't necessarily, you know, if you took a code official through there, I'm not sure that they would have made it. Like,
Yep.
you know, like, because we played in plenty of those. We played in one. It's kind of not totally about the gig, but like, you know, just a good story, I think.
Sure.
It was our first time in Los Angeles. And we were booked at a club called PCH, which was short for Pacific Coast Highway, because it was like this little punk club right on Pacific Coast Highway. You know, and again, no GPS. We're dealing with maps. And this place was it was kind of like tucked away. Like, you know, we finally were like, we're driving back and forth, and we're like, okay, it's got to be around here somewhere, but I have no idea where it is. So we're like, all right, well, let's just find a payphone, because again, pre-cell phone. Let's find a payphone. We'll call this guy, you know, find out what's going on. We find this McDonald's like, you know, a couple miles away, and we stop there. And, you know, I get out and I'm on the payphone, and I'm like, hey, you know, he answers. I'm like, hey, we're trying to find this club. You know, I'm Todd, I'm in Graham. Like, you know, and we've been driving around for like 20 minutes now. We're sure that we're close. Like, you just need to like give us specific directions to the club. And so he's like, okay, well, where are you at now? And I'm like, well, I'm at this McDonald's, you know, and he's like, oh, is there a gas station like catty-cornered from the McDonald's? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, write these down really, really quick and then get the fuck out of there, because you're like in the heart of Compton right now.
Oh, no.
Really? He's like, you do not want to be where you are. So we're like, okay, so where were those directions again? Like, and then we get there, we find the club, and this is kind of where it turns into a bad gig. I wouldn't say it was like a bad gig as far as playing in the crowd. That was reasonably decent, but this place, I say this endearingly, was one of the biggest shitholes I've ever been in my life. Like, you know, I've been in some gross places, and I wouldn't use the bathroom in this place. Like, it was just, you know, holes in the drywall, like, you know, like, just like, okay, hey, you know what? Give us our $75 and we'll be on our way now that we're done playing. Thank you very much. So that was an interesting one. Let's see. I'll switch gears for like a half a second. This is more just like a gig nightmare that was not our fault. So I played in when I stopped touring. I played in a local band for like 12, 13 years called Reverend Blue Jeans, and we got pretty well known in our region, you know. And so we had this one day where we were, you know, our one friend was having a private party. It was like for his kid's graduation. He really wanted us to play. We're like, okay, fine, we'll play. But we had another gig that day playing this like local street fair. And so we're like, well, the street fair is like, you know, until 5 or whatever, and then we don't have to be there to set up till 7, and it's only a 30-minute drive, so we should be fine, you know. So we're in the middle of like our next to last song at the street fair, and all of a sudden power's gone. We're like, all the amps, like nothing but drums, and we're like, what just happened? So it turns out some of the vendors for the street fair were breaking down, and instead of unplugging the line to their food truck or whatever, they unplugged the line to the stage. So, you know, we're just like, you know, and so it was like, you know, it was a big song. It was something like, you know, Voodoo Child or something like that, where it's just a big ending. And so, you know, of course we're like, hey, we lost power. Like, I don't know what the hell that's about. And they were like, oh, sorry. And so they're like, we'll plug it back in. So instead of plugging it back into the outlet it came out of, they decided to plug it into a 220 line, which immediately just blew all of our stuff. Like, right? So
then you have the gig later that day.
Yeah. So we're like, well, I guess, you know, we're not finishing anymore because we don't have a working guitar amp or bass amp or anything really. So I have a recording studio at my house, and I have the appropriate gear for that studio. So, but my house was in the opposite direction from our second gig. So, you know, I'm on the phone to my wife. God love her. She's the most supportive person I know on the planet. And I was like, hey, I need you to go down to the studio. I need you to pick up the Marshall. I need you to pick up the Fender Basement Head. And I need you to pick up this cabinet and this and throw it in your trunk and just meet me here. So she was like, what? Hey, what? I was like, just don't even ask. Just bad things have happened. Credit to the town. The town did reimburse us for all our equipment. So
okay,
that was good. But so anyway, so then we go off to the, you know, so we go off to this like, you know, private party that we're playing, and, you know, we're setting everything up, and, you know, they have like a couple easy ups for us there. But, you know, again, the bass player and guitar player, you know, we're just a trio. Are using gear from my studio that's not their normal gear. So like they're trying to dial in sound, you know, to get a decent mix for us. And cause we're just piecemealing this all together. And we are like literally 2 songs in, and it is just like torrential downpour out of nowhere. Right. So, you know, we're literally like, we're right outside the garage. We're literally like throwing amps in the garage. Our trailer was like 10 feet away. We're throwing my kit pieces set up into the trailer, you know, just get everything out of the rain. Like, you know, and at that point in time, the person that, you know, had booked us, you know, had a good sense of humor, and he was like, well, you know, you can't control the weather, whatever. So he goes in and comes out with a half gallon of Dewar's, and he's like, well, we might as well just kind of pass this around a little bit if we're all just going to be hanging out. So we're like, okay, fine. You know, so there was, you know, started out probably like 15 of us. So, you know, finally, you know, 2-3 shots, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like, you know, so people are just kind of casually stepping away from this. And our bass player is just kind of like in la la land, not thinking about it. I look over like 20 minutes later, and it's just him and the host passing this bottles of Dewar's back and forth. Right. So we're just like, okay, well, this probably isn't going to work out well for him, but in the meantime, the rain has stopped, and, you know, things have kind of dried up a little bit. The sun's back out, and, you know, we check the radar, and okay, well, it looks clear from here on out. So the host's wife says, hey, you know, if you guys are willing to, you know, set up and play for the rest of the time you were scheduled, like, you know, we'll still pay you, and, you know, we really appreciate it. So we're like, you know, the guitar player and I are like, well, yeah, that sounds fine. Why not? So we go over and we tap our bass player on the shoulder. We're like, hey, man, you know, we're gonna set up and play now that the storm went through. And he was kind of like, what? He's like, I don't think I can play right now. We're like, well, dude, like, yeah, we'll set up all your gear. You'll be fine. I should mention he was our main singer too. Right?
Oh no.
So the funniest thing about it is, you know, and a lot of this crowd that's there know us. You know, they come out to see us every time we play. So we get set up. And the funniest thing about it was when we were playing the songs, he was totally on. When the second we were between songs, he was like a train wreck, you know? And the worst thing about it was they all think it's hilarious because they've never seen him like this before. So they keep giving him beer.
No.
And we're like, stop giving him beer. They're like, oh my God, no, this is the funniest thing we've ever seen. Like, we're just gonna, until he falls over, we're gonna keep giving him beer. Like, by the end of the night, he had like mud on his bass. Like, it's just like,
geez.
so then we're breaking down finally, and he's like, he's still pretty blasted. Well, he's more blasted than when we started, probably. And he's like, no, I want to help. We're like, dude, just go sit down. We got this. Like, And he's like, no, I insist on pulling my weight. Like, what can I do? We're like, all right, dude, wrap up mic cables. You wrap up mic cables. We'll take care of the rest of it. All right. So he goes off, and, it's like 10 minutes later, and we think he just got distracted and good. He's out of our way. And he comes up to me and hands me one mic cable. And I was like, what's this? He's like, I wrapped this up for you. I'm going to go get another one.
Oh.
So, with the guitar player and I were, well, you know what? He's occupied. He's happy. He thinks he's helping. We're all good. But by the time he got the third mic cable wrapped, we literally had everything else torn down and packed up. So that was kind of like a 1-2 punch bad gig day. Like,
You got through it.
we did.
You got through it.
We did. Because that was always kind of our MO, was to try and just do whatever we can, to get through. So
Yeah, I'm fortunate. Like, I've played a handful of gigs where like the power goes out and whatever, but I've never had any of my equipment damaged for the most part. Not that I remember, but
Yeah.
I did have a strange interruption earlier this summer. We were playing at down in Souderton, PA, kind of near like north of Philly.
Okay.
That sort of like
gotcha.
maybe Bucks County, well, whatever.
Okay.
So we're playing down in Souderton for their community day festival sort of thing, I think. And it's just like a big amphitheater in the park. We weren't sure what to expect, but by the time we're on stage, there's something like maybe 3,000 people out there.
Oh, that's
It's awesome.
great, man. Yeah.
So we're playing, and we're doing like a lot of our usual set, like the 80s sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And we're about to go into Beat It, Michael Jackson,
Yep.
with the big
Classic
dramatic
tune.
intro, bum, like we have the synthesizer, bum, 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 and like I usually do like the descending.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I go to play the note, and nothing happens. And then the keys just disappear. All we hear is the drums. The power didn't go off, but they did turn us off because one of the, I guess, community organizers came up to the microphone. He says, "We would like to make an announcement.
Oh, God.
Hot dogs are now for sale for $1. So please go get some hot dogs." And I'm thinking, I'm just laughing the whole time. I'm thinking, we got interrupted for a hot dog announcement?
I've never been at a show that I've been preempted by hot dogs before.
In front of 3,000 people.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That is fantastic. That might be my new goal. Like, figure out a way to be preempted by hot dogs. Like, because that's a story. Like, that's a good one.
I love it.
Oh.
I love live music. You don't get
Oh.
anything like that. You don't get that at, like, sporting events,
Oh, no. Absolutely not.
I love it.
Love it. Oh, so I think probably like I'm gonna kind of head towards home plate here, because this one's probably like the biggie
All right, bring us home.
out of all of us. So first time in Dallas, Texas. Place isn't there anymore. I don't think. I'm 99% sure, so I don't mind naming it. It was a place called Moon Tunes, where we had booked a show. Never been there before. Didn't know anything about the place. Right. So we played in Austin, Texas the night before at this awesome club, like in the indie circuit. That was the place to play. It was called Emo's. It was a great spot.
I feel like I've heard of that before.
Yeah, the 90s and through like probably the aughts, that was kind of like the indie club to play there. Then it kind of went away, and it just came back like several years ago.
Okay.
But it's a different vibe from what I hear. But anyway, so we played there a bunch over the years. Love the place. But, it's our first time there. We don't have a guaranteed hotel on our rider yet. So, we're on the search for a place to stay. And we don't have a ton of money. And so we end up like, we can't find anywhere in Austin to stay. So we call ahead to Moon Tunes and say, hey, because, Austin to Dallas, I think is probably like, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours, something like that. So it's not a horrible drive. And, we call ahead and we're like, hey, we're in Austin. We don't really have a place to stay tonight. Is there anywhere in Dallas that we could stay? And they said, "Oh yeah, yeah, no problem. You can stay at the venue. Like, you know, it's a big place. There's tons of couches and stuff. You guys can just crash there." We're like, "Perfect." You know, so we hop in the van, drive all the way to Dallas, find this address. Again, no GPS. So we find the address, and it's just this like kind of warehouse in this industrial district. And we're like, "Okay, is this the place?" You know, so we, you know, casually like knock on the door. And this dude kind of answers at the door, looking at us with that, like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" look. And I was like, you know, "Hey, I called up here. We're in Graham. We're playing here tomorrow night. Like, you know, I spoke to somebody who said, you know, it'd be cool for us to crash in the venue." And, oh, okay. Well, come on in. We're starting to walk in. And he was like, "Oh, do you have your gear in your van?" "Well, yeah, we have like all our amps and everything. Like, you know," and he's like, "You should probably bring it inside if you want to have it tomorrow." So we're like, okay, all right. So we unload, you know, and they have this. It turns out like you go in like what would have been, I guess, the office entrance for this industrial building. And there's a couple people that have like basically framed out a living area. Like they each have their own room. There's this makeshift kitchen, all this weird stuff. And so we're just piling our gear into what would be this like foyer kind of. You know, by the time we get done unloading, you know, then we grab like some snacks or whatever to just chill out and eat. And next thing we know, this dude's gone. We have no idea where he is. Like, we're like, "Oh, what? Okay." I mean, the guy was really weird, right? So we're just kind of like, you know, so it's literally just the four of us and our tour manager just sitting there, like kind of looking around, like talking to each other. Like, okay, well, we're in this place we don't know anything about and no one else is here. Like, what's going on? So fast forward, you know, 20, 30 minutes or whatever. This other dude shows up and he also lives there. And it turns out he's the guy that I talked to.
Oh, okay.
Right. So he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, like da. You know, yeah, like if you go through those double doors in there, that's the venue. You know, make yourselves at home. If you want to drag your gear in there instead of leaving it here, that's cool. Whatever you guys want to do, like, you know, if you need to come and go, like, let me know. And, you know, if one of us isn't going to be here, you know, we can give you a key, like, you know, and, you know, could not have been better. Right.
Yeah.
So we're finally like, okay, well, let's go check out where we're playing tomorrow. And so it turns out it is an old warehouse. It's a complete shithole. And they do have a stage, so there's that. And they have a PA, so there's that. You know, but like, you know, the couches are like shit that the thrift store didn't want, basically. Like, you know, and so, you know, we're just hanging out in there kind of like on our own. And he, you know, he talked to us for a little while and he's like, "Well, I'm going to go like chill in my room for a little bit." We're like, "Okay, that's cool." And so he goes through the double doors, and closes them. And next thing we know, we hear this like screaming, like going back and forth with two people. We're like, "Okay, what's going on now?" Right. So, you know, this goes on for a little while and we don't know any of these people personally. So we're just like, we're just going to stay where we are, you know, and hopefully nothing too bad happens here. Well, next thing we know, we hear a door slam and we hear a car go peeling somewhere, like squealing tires peeling.
Yeah.
And then the nice dude comes in. He's like, "Hey man," he's like, I'm really sorry that you had to hear that." And we're like, "Oh, dude, you know, we're trying to be, you know, we have a free place to stay, so we're gonna be nice as we can." And he's like, "Yeah," we're like, "Dude, you know, shit happens among roommates. It's fine." He's like, "Yeah, my roommate's kind of on this huge coke binge right now, so he's a little out of control." Like, we're like, okay. So that's A, probably why he was a little weird, and B, why he just stormed out, got in his car, and squealed off. So we think, okay, well, he's like, he probably won't be back till the morning, so you're fine. We're like, okay, cool. So then it ends up starting to rain, and it turns out there are a lot of leaks in this warehouse. So it was strategically moving the couches around there where you weren't getting dripped on, you know. And so we finally kind of get settled in, and we're like, okay, we can make it through one night of sleeping here. Like, you know, we'll do this. So we finally fall asleep about like 4:30 in the morning. We hear more yelling, and it turns out that the guy that was on the coke binge had totaled his car, and now he was on whatever else he was on and showed up with the drummer from Tripping Daisy, and they decided at 4:30 a.m. they were going to jam. So the drummer's playing the drum kit and this other dude is playing a saxophone, and those are the only instruments. And it's in, you know, the place we're going to play tomorrow. So we're all laying there trying to sleep, and these guys are like jamming because they're both feeling it, but I don't think anybody who was in their right mind would be. Like,
are they on the stage going through the PA system?
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So they finally were like, "Oh, come jam with us, come jam with us." I think I got up and played like 2 songs, just like hoping that they would be like, "Okay, we'll go to bed now." Like, you know what I mean? And it was like this piece of shit drum kit, and so I got up, like, played like 2 songs with them. I'm like, okay, I really need some sleep now. Like, I haven't been getting shit for sleep this whole tour. Like, and they're like, "Oh, we should keep jamming, man." I'm like, dude, not on what you're on, man. Like, I gotta go to bed. Like, so finally, like, after another 20, 30 minutes, they kind of petered out and left. And we woke up the next day and we're like, okay, let's spend as little time here today as we have to. And so, we went and explored Dallas and, kind of became tourists for a day because, why not? And then by the time we got ready for the show that night, the show was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible. The facility leaves a lot to be desired, but that was, like, I think one of maybe only 2 shows in my life where we got done playing, and the second we were done playing, we're like, okay, let's load up and get the fuck out of here. Like, because last night could happen again tonight, and we don't want to be here for it.
Oh,
and
no.
it was just like, and we never played that place again.
I don't blame you.
By our choosing, not theirs. Like,
yeah.
So,
Jeez.
yeah, touring, especially when you're not a big name, is a very interesting world sometimes.
And these are the stories that the average person doesn't know about.
That's right. That's right. I have many friends that tell me I should write a book because, I'm just sticking to the stories that are related specifically to gigs. I'm not even talking about, I haven't even touched the secondary stuff that happens between gigs. So, there's lots of stories there too.
What do you have in terms of that? I'm curious to hear.
Okay. I think probably my favorite one, and this just to me, so 2 things, right? So I figured out, and I have yet to see this proven false. If you're on tour, if there's going to be a conflict in the band, it's going to go down between the 2-week mark and the 3-week mark. If you make it past 3 weeks, then you're probably good, right? So, and it was always dumb shit, right? This is just kind of a random story that, like, to this day, the other person involved and I look back and laugh hysterically about it. On tour early on, we weren't making a whole lot of money. Our per diem was shit. So you were really trying to be as frugal as you could. So I would buy, and I should fully qualify, I'm a smoker. So I was looking to buy cigarettes. And also, I like to have a few drinks every now and then. So
Sure.
I was trying to parse out how in the per diem I could feed myself, have a little bit to drink, and have some cigarettes to smoke too. So my first day when I got my per diem, what I would typically do is hit a grocery store and buy, like, just a cheap loaf of white bread and like a pound of cheap lunch meat because I could eat for 2 or 3 days off of that, right? And, people would give you stuff here and there. So that wasn't the only thing you were eating, but you had sustenance, guaranteed if you need it. And then over the next 2 days, I could buy, a pack of cigarettes, maybe a bottle of, like, cheap booze or whatever that would get me through a few days. And so, and the one thing that we collectively did as a band was we always kept a cooler cold in, the van that the band paid for. So, like, the cooler needed more ice, that came out of the band fund. That wasn't anyone's pocket. Like, and so, I had a place that I could keep, like, deli meat and, whatever. And so we're cruising down the road one day and out in the Midwest somewhere. And these stories kind of dovetail together. And so I just decided, oh man, I'm hungry. I'm going to make a sandwich. So I grab bread, grab some lunch meat, and I'm just sitting there eating my sandwich. And I'm on the bench seat behind the driver. And our guitar player is sitting to my right on the bench seat. And I notice while I'm eating, he's just, like, staring at me. And I was like, finally, I was like, dude, what? Like, why are you staring at me? He's like, dude, you were driving me fucking crazy. I was like, how am I driving you crazy? So now I'm eating a sandwich that's like a deli sandwich on 2 pieces of bread, normal size, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, because why do you have to eat your sandwich with 2 hands on the bread? Why can't you eat it with 1? And I was like, right? So, right now we say that and we laugh about it, right? But at that moment in time, because we were between the 2 and 3 week mark, my response to him was, fuck you, I'll eat my sandwiches however I want. To which he looks at me and goes, dude, you do it with big cookies too, and it drives me worse insane. It's like, and we almost went to blows over how I ate my sandwiches. Right. And to this day, we're like, dude, I can't believe because we're still friends. And we're like, dude, I can't believe we actually were ready to like throw down about how I eat my sandwiches. Right. So fast forward, I'm going to say month into the tour, something like that. Right. We're coming through, I want to say it was Idaho or Montana. In certain states, you're allowed to sleep at rest stops, right? Without getting, in trouble with the cops or anybody. Like, it's just totally okay. So we were on tour with my previous band, who were still really good friends of ours. We were on tour with them, so it was kind of like a reunion. We hadn't seen, they had moved to Florida, so we hadn't seen each other for a few months. So we were just loving, spending time together. And again, we don't have a place to stay. So we're like, well, we'll just hit a rest stop. It's legal to sleep there. We're fine. So we, and our guitar player at that point in time, the guitar player that I got in an argument with about sandwiches, was clearly being on tour was not what he thought it would be, so he was kind of being a pain. To the point where we were all like, okay, dude, I think he's done when he gets home, and I think he's going to do it on its own. I don't think we're going to have to ask him to leave, And so we pull over at this rest stop, and we quickly, we had a loft in our van that we kept our equipment under. So, we had plenty of sleeping spots. And we had, 4 of us plus a roadie, and we had 4 sleeping spots. So the question became, who's got to sleep sitting up, And nobody wanted to, because we're all like tired as fuck. And so he's like, so we're going back and forth, and we're discussing and being reasonably cordial about it. And he's just like, fine, I'll go sleep somewhere else. And he grabs a sleeping bag and he grabs his pillow and he goes out into the middle of the lawn at this rest stop and just lays out a sleeping bag and just lays down, And, from our perspective, because, we were kind of like button heads anyway. We're like, okay, well, problem solved. Good. The rest of us can sleep in the van. We're good. So our roadie and I, we had a little like propane grill. We're out like cooking up some hot dogs or some shit like that. And we hear this kind of like, it almost sounds like an electrical relay, like a kind of thing. And we're like, what was that? Because it was like, now it's like 2 a.m. And, we kind of like look around. We're like, okay, well, nothing looks like it's on fire or anything. So I guess we're cool. And so, we finished cooking up our stuff and we're like now sitting there eating it. And this is like, this is out of an 80s movie. I swear to God, it happened. I couldn't have written this better. So all of a sudden we hear these relays going off again, like, like, and out of nowhere, every sprinkler in that lawn starts going off. And he's right in the middle of every single one. So we're just kind of sitting there watching, and at that point in time, we're not willing to say anything because, like, we're just like, he's already pissed, So he gets his sleeping bag up, grabs his pillow, and like storms off into the woods. And we didn't see him again till the next morning. So
poor guy.
I don't know where he slept at, but it was just like, okay, it's one of those things. Like if something bad happens to somebody that, you're like, oh man, I'm really sorry. But if something bad happens to somebody that you're already kind of pissed at, it's kind of funny sometimes. And that's exactly what it was. So, and again, still good friends with the guy. He did leave the band when we got home from that tour. He was just like, yeah, I don't think the road's what I'm cut out for. So, so that might be the story about touring that I've probably told more than any other, because like I said, it's like out of an 80s movie. Like, you never would have expected it to happen, and you couldn't have written it any better. Like,
I mean, just like the whole slapstick comedy of it. Like,
right. Oh, yeah.
The sandwich argument. Come on.
Oh, my God, dude. Like, we to this day still laugh about that. Like, it was like some of the arguments you have on tour were just like the dumbest shit. Like, for no reason whatsoever, other than like you're stuck in a van with these people that you can't get away from. Like, and all these little things that normally you just brush off and you don't care about, they just start grating. And, it was not only him that was getting great. Obviously I was very defensive about it. Like, so yeah, many fun times from back in the day. Like,
Sure sounds like it.
yeah, it was good. You know, don't necessarily want to go do it again, but I'm definitely glad I did. So
Awesome. Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything else you wanted to say or anything else you wanted to promote? Anything you have going on?
I don't think so. Well, actually, so Graham, my touring band, got back together for the first time in 20 years this past December, and we started writing some new music. So we got some new stuff up on Spotify if people want to check that out. And we actually worked it out with all of our record labels to put our entire previous catalog up there. So that's pretty cool. You know, and other than that, come see Fully Loaded, come see the Good Little Americans, you know, if you see them in your neighborhood. So, and yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I got other studio stuff in the works, but you know, nothing that's ready for public consumption yet. So, yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to, come on the show, tell some stories.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I had a blast, Max. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Gig Nightmares. Gig Nightmares is an independently produced podcast made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, we would appreciate if you left a rating and a review for us. Gig Nightmares.